Right now, the judiciary is really and truly under siege from other arms of government. Just last week, police raided 2 judges' chambers where a claim of thousands of dollars found in the chambers was raised. The matter is in court, but it raised pertinent questions on handling of judges and corruption in the courts of law. Now, this came hot in the heels of President Uhuru Kenyatta's refusal to appoint 6 judges, a matter that attracted protest from former Chief Justice and the current CJ. Still, the matter has not been concluded. Meanwhile, Parliament is processing a bill on picking a CJ that essentially gives MPs powers to nominate a Chief Justice away from the Judicial Service Commission. There's a lot going on in the judiciary as a whole, raising one question tonight. With all due respect, is our judicial accountability the weakest link of it all? I have the best and the ultimate guest tonight, constitutional lawyer Ahmednasir Abdullahi. Karibu sana to the program. Thank you very much. And advocate and public law scholar, Professor Migai Akech, for the first time on television.
Thank you very much.
Karibu sana. Let's just give you a brief of what happened to Parliament today.
Following Thursday's arrest of Justices Aggrey Muchelule and Ali Said Chitembwe, the judiciary says it is under siege. The two were then held at the DCI headquarters in Nairobi to record statements over allegations of abuse of office and graft before they were later released. By Friday, the Kenya Magistrates and Judges Association had sought audience of the Constitutional Court by filing a petition to protest the police action against Justices Aggrey Muchelule and Said Chitembwe. The lawyers argued that the actions by the DCI spelled doom for the judiciary.
We have now an office of the DCI that has run without due regard to the rule of law, without regard to the constitutional safeguards, without regard to the fundamental human rights of a judge.
Sentiments echoed by the Chief Justice Martha Koome, who says she had no prior knowledge that the 2 judges were under investigations, and I quote, "The arrest of the 2 judges has caused anxiety among judges and judicial officers. I assure all judges and judicial officers that the independence of the judiciary and their constitutional duties are protected by the Constitution. They should therefore continue discharging their duties without any fear in accordance with their oath of office." End of quote. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, too, claiming it had no information regarding the DCI's case against Judges Muchelule and Chitembwe. According to the Kenya Magistrates and Judges Association, any inquest into the conduct of judicial officers should be done through the Judicial Service Commission.
Is this an affront to intimidate the judiciary so that they can play ball and pass the BBI? So, very many fundamental questions are coming to play as to why the DCI, the criminal arm, is being used to deal with issues of the independence of the judiciary.
This money that was being talked about, was it treated? Has anybody seen it? This is a serious game. This is a dangerous game. And when we are saying this, we know that nobody is safe. Something must be done. People must face the process. Heads must roll. I don't know whose head will roll first, but heads at the DCI must roll.
Justice Julius Nga, who issued the injunction, has given the Inspector General of Police and the Director of Public Prosecution 7 days to respond. Bridget's Ghana, NTV.
All right, welcome all. With all due respect, on social, #WDR. Let's start where we should, without mincing words. Ahmednasir, is there corruption in the judiciary?
I mean, corruption has always been there, from God knows when, and it's still there. I mean, corruption is the biggest problem facing the judiciary. It has always faced the judiciary. So, I mean, for example, when the government says that there is corruption in the judiciary, they have, a very strong point, because as legal practitioners, we have talked about this, for the last 20 years, 30 years. We have tried everything, I tell guys that there's no country in this part of the world, or even in the world, really, that invested as much effort as Kenya in judicial reforms. We had the radical surgery, we had the vetting process, we had so many commissions But we are unable to solve this problem because I think Prof was talking about it. It's a, it's a societal problem. It is a systemic problem. I mean, we have, because corruption is so vast in this country, it's so common. Even in the judiciary, people think it is common. And I can tell you as a practitioner, we are so tired, we are so desperate about corruption at all levels that we don't know, what to do next.
Prof, there's that knowing the corruption is there, and then there's the question of arresting judges at their chambers. Is that what we should do?
No, that is not what we should do at all. Because the judges' chambers are really sacred places. They are the bastion of justice, so to speak. So you really don't want judges being arrested in a courtroom or in their chambers, because that really also undermines public faith in the courts. However, just picking up from where Mwalimu left, I think part of the reason that corruption is systemic not just in the judiciary but in the country has to do with deficiencies in our accountability institutions. So talking about the judiciary, from my perspective, I think we emphasized quite a bit. I know there's been quite a lot of efforts to reform the judiciary through different initiatives across the decades. But I don't think they've sufficiently emphasized on accountability. So I think and much of it has to do with systems for ensuring the day-to-day accountability of judges. What we've done, if you're talking about the judges, and in that sense you need to distinguish them from the magistrates.
Yeah.
So whereas it's possible for the Judicial Service Commission to discipline magistrates and other judicial officers on a day-to-day basis, that does not happen with judges. So the only way you get rid of a judge is by a tribunal process. And that is very rare. And because it is rare, I think a lot of judges can be emboldened knowing that really, how likely is that going to happen? Yeah. So for me, it has to be that we must rethink our accountability institutions, particularly the structure of the JSC and its responsibilities. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Ahmed, you're a regular court
I agree with him. That's a very strong point, because as he rightly says, the JSC can, discipline magistrates. They can dismiss them. You give them a hearing. You show them the charges.
And that happens on regular.
And that happens regularly. Yeah. But JSC doesn't have similar powers of discipline, and unless you go for, the tribunal. The tribunal. Yeah. And correctly, there is no way of checking, how judges are accountable, for example. If you look at the history of this country, how many judges were removed even through disciplinary tribunals in the last 20 years? Okay, forget about the radical surgery and the vetting. But in terms of, saying that, for example, let me give you an example. If you delay a ruling or a judgment for a year or 6 months, is it a case for tribunal?
No one knows.
No one knows, yes. Because there's some judges who have not written rulings for 3 years, for 6 months, for 18 months. If you can't, for example, what do you do with a judge who doesn't do those things? So there must be a process, for example, that the JSC says that from now on, we will have a rule that if a judge does not do this, this is the consequences. And also, another form of the lack of accountability is, I think there's a time, CJ William Mutunga tried, but it didn't fly. Audit, lifestyle audit. There are judges with huge properties. Someone was building, I don't know, some mall somewhere. Where does a judge get money to buy a mall or build a mall?
Perhaps he's a good judge.
No.
He's an excellent judge.
We know all the salaries is from 500 to 1 million shillings, It's a matter of public record. So we need to know, when we see a judge buying properties, for example, in South Coast, there must be, a knock on his door and tell him, can you please explain to this? And that needs to be done constantly,
Let me ask, there's this question that the problem with the judiciary is, first, it's packed with too many lawyers, and everyone else who's an ordinary person, other Kenyans, especially the constitution of the JSC, does not allow you to, be checked in by other groups who are not lawyers. Is that part of the problem, that it's made to be the question of courts is basically lawyers' issues and non-lawyers do not have space for it?
I think it's part of the problem. And if you look at judicial power as any other power, and power has to be exercised in a manner that is democratic, in the sense that it is participatory, in the sense that it's accountable. And that is important because the exercise of any power will affect your liberties, it will affect your livelihoods. And that goes for the exercise of the judicial power. And precisely because of that, it should not be a preserve of lawyers or judges. And that is why, for me, the composition of the Judicial Service Commission, which is the accountability institution, is problematic. Because it's all lawyers except for the two representatives of the public that are appointed by the president. So one, I think we need to rethink the composition of the JSC so that we bring in more voices. The other has to do with allowing the public to participate in the process of judicial decision making. We used to do it. You remember we used to have assessors in criminal trials, which is akin to the jury system in many ways, because it allows the public to better understand how the courts work, to be better involved, and I think that will bring them closer to the people. So those two things for me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree and I disagree. First, law is like any other profession. I mean, in journalism, when you're disciplining your members, I mean, it is his peers that discipline him or her.
Yeah.
The same with engineers, the same with doctors. The JAC, it's true, needs reform, and I've been there, and I know, the deficiencies it has. We can add more members of the public, but I can tell you one thing. The process of regulating the judiciary makes much more sense to people who have legal background than people who have, for example, medical or engineering background, because they know, for example, when they know how long the court process takes, they know the dynamics of all those things. So it is good to have lay people or guys from, other professions or represent the public. I think it needs to be expanded. Needs to reduce the judges, in my view, not lawyers. Probably you need to increase the lawyers, because we represent huge constituencies. I used to tell guys that when I was elected member, I used to represent this 16,000 lawyers. I mean, there are judges who are elected by 6 judges, and we have same voice in the JC. So I used to tell them, you represent 6, I represent 15,000. But we can improve the efficiency of the JC by incorporating people who are non-lawyers. But I think the core members still has to be people with legal background, because it is, a very important organ that regulates a very important arm of government.
There's a proposal.
True,
yes.
if I may, I certainly agree. Yeah? But part of the problem is that the way that the JSC is structured now, it takes an interest group approach to regulation, in the sense that the LSK representatives represent the interests of the LSK, the judges represent the interests of the judiciary. And a different way of doing it would be to say, let us get people who are a little removed from these institutions. Yes, they are lawyers, but they are a little removed, so they are disinterested in the goings-on
of the day-to-day.
Yes, of the judiciary. I think that would give them a better perspective in terms of taking care of the public interest.
Right, I want to take a short break. When I come back, I want to address these questions of exactly, and you are seeing it on Twitter and everywhere else, guys asking, should judges be arrested? If not, what should happen to judges if they are sort of thought to be corrupt or not corrupt? Taking a short break. When you come back, we'll address that question. My panel tonight, Ahmednasir Abdullahi and Professor Migai Akech. Don't go too far.
Ngarisha na Optiven. It's just about the right time to build your dream home. At the Garden of Joy by Optiven. It comes with Maram roads, solar street lights, water piping along the mains, and tree planting is done. Deposit 995,000 Kenya shillings and get a free washing machine for your home. Call us today on 0790 300 300.
Just one capful of Dettol is enough to disinfect surfaces and protect your family and your home. Dettol, tested effective against COVID-19.
Nestle Nunkid 4 helps build a strong foundation for your growing child. Nestle Nunkid 4, our best for you.
Win 25 million shillings on the easiest jackpot in Kenya for only 20 bob. Play the middle jackpot every week on betsafe.co.ke.
Did you know at Ruiru Mabati Factory, you can open an account and lipa pole pole at your convenience? Did you know at Ruiru Mabati Factory, you can get customized sizes according to your roof plan to avoid wastage? Did you know Ruiru Mabati Factory offers free delivery countrywide within 72 hours? Call us now on 0111 050 700. Ruiru Mabati Factory, mali safi kwa bei poa.
Wonderful, your baby's quite active.
After I discovered Molfix, I rediscovered my baby. She's jumping and running around.
Well, we call that the Molfix Comfort. Thanks to its elastic side bands, Molfix provides freedom of movement for your baby. All babies deserve a high-quality diaper. You should also try Molfix.
What's that? I got a rash and...
Don't lie to me. Who did that to you?
What's wrong? Nilikwambia nataka gin and tonic. Si mojito. Are you a baby? Are you a child? How could my dad get married to you and not inform me his only child?
Do you really know what your father did for a living?
You mean what he does for a living? Don't talk about him as though he's dead.
Uliolewa alikufa. Just shut your mouth.
Pieces of Us in association with Nivea Nourishing Cocoa Body Lotion.
It's time to show off your best skin. Wear your skin with pride every time with Nivea Nourishing Cocoa Body Lotion.
You're watching With All Due Respect on socials, #WADR. So the question, the overwhelming question that we're getting from you is the question of disciplining judges. And the question is, the only way you can discipline a judge is through JSC and a tribunal. And it has to be something of really importance, great importance, gross misconduct, if you like. Anything else cannot be detected. Is that part of the problem, and is there a way for us to fix it, Prof?
That is I think, the root of the problem, and it can be fixed. There have been various attempts to do it. I remember when the former Chief Justice Willie Mutunga took office, he tried to initiate some of those reforms, and at the time, that need still remains. There's a need for a judicial code of conduct that is enforced. And there are many ways to enforce a code of conduct such as that, in terms of just ensuring this day-to-day integrity and accountability in the conduct of judges. And there are many things you can do. You can have confidential hearings if there are suspicions that a particular judge or officer is not doing the right thing. You can have peer review. You can have counseling, and then you can establish suitable sanctions. But also in terms of managing conflicts of interest. You know, with the legislature, we usually say, let the legislature have a register of conflicts of interest. Why can't we do the same for the judiciary?
Right.
Yeah.
Ahmednasir, there's this question. We have now a new Chief Justice, it's a new broom, right? And the question has been, are we going to judge her too soon? Should we give her more time? And based on the problems that we're facing, this urgency of a problem of, the corruption and all these allegations that are being leveled against judges, what do you think?
No, I agree. I mean, we need to give her more time. Our patience is slightly running out. But I think she deserves more time. But our expectation, the expectations of Kenyans about the new Chief Justice is very high. Fortunately, she will have a long tenure in terms of, she will be CJ for about 10 years. But I think very soon, she must come out with a blueprint on how she wants to address, the problems facing the courts, whether it's the Supreme Court, whether it's the High Court, whether it's the... There's a lot, as a practitioner and someone who has been involved in the politics of the JAC and Law Society, I know that the judiciary is almost breaking down, It's at that point. I mean, the courts are inefficient. We take a lot of time to hear cases. The courts are so corrupt. They are so inefficient. So the new CJ, I think she's in office for 2 months. She's familiarizing herself with how things work. But the time is fast approaching when we will be very critical of her if we don't hear her blueprints on how should she address the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is 11 years old. It has disappointed everybody. It has failed on all perimeters. It is being accused of everything. And the other day, the Supreme Court is supposed to hear only few cases. Nowadays, it hears anything. The law of contract, the law on tort, the law on this. And there was this interesting case, between a bank and a borrower, that someone issued an injunction. The lawyers complained and said that you don't have jurisdiction. A 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court had the case and said that we have jurisdiction. When the main appeal was heard, they said, no, we made a mistake, we have no jurisdiction. Imagine the injustice you cause when you stop through an injunction, when you refuse to dismiss the appeal, then finally, a year or two down the road, you say, oh, we realize. That is not something a Supreme Court, the apex court of a country can make. But it's for the new CJ, we can't wait as lawyers, and I think as Prof will support me on this, for her to show us that this is my agenda for the Supreme Court. This is my agenda for the Court of Appeal, the High Court and the Magistracy. And I want Kenyans, for example, that when you file a suit, the case cannot stay for 2 or 3 years. If it's a criminal case, it must be heard. We need a whole reforms. The other day, there was a criminal case. I think the Supreme Court said it should be stopped because it was in the court process for 25 years or 15 years. We can't have. So the Chief Justice must come with a blueprint, and very soon, so that we can interrogate, we can input. But let us give her more time, I think.
When you say very soon, how soon are we?
I think within 6 months, 4 months, 5, 6 months, by December, she must roll out a blueprint, her agenda. Actually, a white paper,
Or sooner.
Or sooner.
Yes.
Or sooner than that.
Yes.
Sooner. The sooner the better.
So the thing about, I said catching on this, if judges make mistake, there's almost no punishment. Ngunjiri Wambugu put up, a bill that is preparing, one of the proposal. I saw, I said actually over the weekend.
Yes.
It's talking about if judges make mistake, there should be a punishment, on such a thing, all right? As one of the things that we should include in this quote-unquote new judiciary. That judges are allowed to make mistake and, people go to prison for a long time, or you lose money, or whatever it is. Is this kind of thing that we should be able to discuss publicly?
Yes, we should be able to discuss it publicly, but whether or not there is how to resolve it is a different question altogether. Because when you're talking about that, for me, it's a very slippery slope. Precisely because you have to be very careful not to interfere with the decisional independence of judges. Simply put, the authority of a judge to make a decision is something that should be sacrosanct in many respects. Of course, corruption undermines that, so you have to figure out ways of dealing with instances of malpractices among judges without interfering with their independence to make decisions. The typical way of reviewing wrongful decisions is through the appellate process. But you see, that also assumes that the other courts are
fairer.
They are fair,
Yes.
they have integrity, which is not always the case.
Yeah.
And that is why these mechanisms of day-to-day management, if you wish, that look at how things are going, that judges are peer-reviewed. So somebody is told, well, this is not good, you shouldn't have done it this way. Those are mechanisms that I think will help the public will help to enhance the public confidence in the judiciary.
Mm-hmm.
But also, a part of the problem for me has to do with how judges are hired. Because the JSC, from my perspective, gives us an appearance of transparency and accountability. It's not fully accountable. And the pretext that we are usually given is that we are protecting the privacy of judges. But if you look at other legislation, for example, the Public Audit Act, with respect to the hiring of other public officers, it says interview panels should actually give reasons for their decisions and share them. Why are we treating judges differently in that sense? Because precisely because it's very difficult to remove a judge and to oversee them on a day-to-day basis to ensure that they're doing the right thing.
It's also very complex.
It's also very complex. You need to get the right people in the first place.
Yeah.
And the only way to get people in the right people in the first place is through impeccable hiring process that everybody can see and say that, you know what, I think this process has integrity. I think we've chosen the right people for the job.
No, I mean, the question you asked is very important. Should judges be punished when they get wrong?
Yeah.
And I think Prof has answered you very well. But there are certain, mistakes, and it happens very often. You get a judgment from a court or a high court judge that says, the capital city of Kenya is Dar es Salaam. It's Dar es Salaam. When you complain, you will be told, oh, no, the judge made an honest mistake. He thought it was... There are those kinds of things, and they happen very often, A deliberate distortion of the law and the facts influenced by other facts. Those kind of things I think the JSC should punish, because it's so obvious that when you say the capital city of Kenya is Dar es Salaam, I mean, you must have been induced to make such huge mistake, yes.
Yeah.
And it happens so often. But there's those other mistakes, error of law or, innocent, when you get the facts wrong, that one is. But I think Prof again raised a very valid point on, how do you recruit judges? I mean, JSC sometimes does excellent jobs. Sometimes they do very poor jobs. But nowadays, I have been there. The pool of lawyers or scholars you can recruit is getting smaller and smaller because very few Kenyans are nowadays interested to become judges.
I wanted to ask you this because, and pick your experience because you've sat in, JSC and, you've recruited judges, the Chief Justice, in fact. The thing is, up to the point that an appearance of, transparency, people are coming and they're being asked questions. So the first problem is the questions are not standardized. You ask different candidates different questions and someone, from the panelist ask another different questions. So if you're following from the public perspective, what are we supposed exactly to be following? And secondly, the results are not made public.
Yes,
what is the reason behind that?
I think I agree with you. It's long overdue, During our time, and I was there for 3 years, and we recruited, I think, some of the best judges, especially in the High Court and the Court of Appeal. I don't remember giving any candidate, and I have interviewed excellent candidates, I don't remember giving a candidate 80%, because I don't think a candidate can score 80%, especially if you are recruiting someone for Chief Justice or the Supreme Court. Nowadays, I'm told they give them 99%. I mean, it's only in class 1 in Kenya you can score. You can
get 99.
But that is rigging, That is a predetermined rigging. Because when you have 6 guys or 5 guys who give 99%, and then they decide to give the other candidates who are competing with candidate X 40%, I mean, that's a rigged process. It's not credible. During our time, it could never happen. I mean, that was a scandal. I remember a time that we were given some, like 5 of us could give the same candidate, same grade, 60%, 65, 57. I mean, people were objective, but that era is long gone because now the government has a lot of interest in JSC. I mean, you have seen the way they shuffle, they remove some members, they bring some members, they influence even how lawyers will elect their members. So, I mean, it's not, I mean, there's a lot of politics in the JSC itself.
Yeah, I want to go to the politics when we come from the other side of the break because we're just like, you know, at the center of politics going to 2022. But still on this question of the transparency and the appearance of transparency with the JSC, Professor Makabutu has been asking for his results. I think he's almost 5 years down the line. The person who won has retired, since gone retired. And it's painful just to find, you know, a process that it's supposed to be transparent, but we can't get to know the results. So what's the whole point of these interviews being public in the first place?
It is a veneer of transparency. I don't think the intention is really to be accountable. Because if it were, scores are not enough.
Yeah.
Because you can pick scores from the air, but you must give reasons behind the scores, and you must be able to tell us that, look, we interviewed 10 candidates. Here is how each compares against the other, and this is why we think candidate X is the best for the job.
Mm-hmm.
That is credible. That is intelligible.
There's this other thing, and you know, you've mentioned of how the pool for candidates has reduced. You know, integrity and credible people to become judges.
But you know, many candidates don't apply because they know the interview process has been rigged and it's not credible. And that's why many qualified candidates don't want to subject themselves to that process because they know someone who has influence has predetermined that issue. But I agree with you again. I mean, the Kenyan JSC is not the only JSC that interviews candidates. I mean, the South African, most JSCs interview. But you know, you have to prepare. You have to, I mean, the questions you ask the candidates. For example, for Chief Justice, I was telling guys that if I was to interview Chief Justice now, I mean, if I go back to the JSC, it will take days to finish a candidate. Yeah. Because, I mean, that office is so important. The insight I have is so different. My expectation is so high now and so different that a candidate for Chief Justice, oh my, you will have a lot to ask him and a lot of guarantees for him to sign with the JSC before you give him that job.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, you can't interview a Chief Justice for 6 hours or 3 hours. It doesn't make sense. Yes.
Somebody is asking, because Grand Mullah knows what he's talking about and you know the problem, why are you not applying for the job of Chief Justice and clean up the
Actually thought you were applying.
No,
it's an honest question.
No,
with all due respect.
I think I can only serve a Chief Justice in a military government, you know. No. There are many candidates I've seen. You know, there are many candidates, especially lawyers, guys in the academics who are qualified. But it saddens me to see that the people who apply are people I will not have considered for even lower jobs in the judiciary. Yes, and that's the tragedy about Kenya, is that guys who can really change this place. I mean, there are only 3 judges, you know, there are only 3 Chief Justices that really transformed or fought this kind of corruption. Mm-hmm. You know, Justice Coker, when he came, he really tried, although he was a very conservative, he wrote a fantastic book. And if you read that book of his, I mean, the incidents of corruption he talks about in courts is amazing. The other one was Justice Gisheru, he tried his best, and Willie Mutunga. Mm-hmm. The others are just there to lock time. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Prof, why have you not applied for this job of Chief Justice? You seem like a decent man. You have, you know, integrity, you know, your career is perfect. Why not apply for this job? I
need to understand our court system better.
So you're going to
having been in the academy, I think it's good to first get a sense of the state of the judiciary.
Let's go to this other question, politics, and the question of, you know, BBI. And maybe take a short break. It appears that BBI was almost like the camelback was broken then.
Oh, you want to talk about BBI?
Let's go. We'll take a short break with all due respect. When we come back, we'll talk about the question of BBI. It's 3 weeks out, but what happened at High Court and what that means for 2022 politics and the judiciary.
Je, wajua asilimia 25 ya watoto nchini Kenya wana ufupi wa kupindukia? Na mmoja kati ya wanawake 4 Kenya ana tatizo la upungufu wa damu mwilini. Dawa mjarabu kwa matatizo hayo ni vyakula vilivyorutubishwa zaidi, maarufu kama fortified foods. Vyakula vya aina hii huwa na madini mengi na gharama yake ni nafuu. Kumbuka, vitamini A inasaidia kuongeza nguvu ya macho na madini ya zinc yanasaidia kuimarisha kinga ya mwili. Iweke familia yako salama na yenye afya kwa kutumia vyakula vilivyorutubishwa zaidi. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwako na Wizara ya Afya, Chuo Kikuu cha JKUAT na Jumuiya ya Umoja wa Ulaya EU.
Win 25 million shillings on the easiest jackpot in Kenya for only 20 bob. Play the middle jackpot every week on betsafe.co.ke.
We are Team Kenya. You win, we win. So buy any Tusker. Take your marks. Check it in your Bekele. Get set. Tuma code to 29844 and win up to 80 million shillings in prizes. Cash, Team Kenya replica jerseys and our sports shoes. Amazing Kenyan holidays. You can also leave a message of support for Team Kenya. When you win, we win. We are Team Kenya. Kenya milele. Excessive alcohol consumption is harmful to your health. Not for sale to persons under the age of 18 years.
Who are you? Why are you here?
I came here to settle my debt.
What's that?
I got a brush and
Don't lie to me. Who did that to you?
what's wrong? Nilikwambia nataka gin and tonic. Si mojito. Are you a baby? Are you a child?
How could my dad get married to you and not inform me he's only child? Do you really know what your father did for a living?
You mean what he does for a living? Don't talk about him as though he's dead.
Uliolewa alikufa. Just shut your mouth.
Pieces of Us in association with Nivea Nourishing Cocoa Body Lotion.
It's time to show off your best skin. Wear your skin with pride every time with Nivea Nourishing Cocoa Body Lotion.
All right, welcome back. With all due respect, when we take a break, we said we're going to discuss the question on BBI and just how exactly this monumental decision from the High Court has sort of put us in this coalition course with politics, and especially the judiciary with the coalition politics of 2022. Let me start with you, Ahmednasir. You had a very successful space. I think it's 10,000 people also showed up because of the interest of the judgment of the High Court. First, what did that tell you? And secondly, as you listen to the Court of Appeal and, in sort of 2 or 3 weeks, we'll get the judgment, where do you think we are in terms of what happened with that judgment and where the legal profession is and politics of 2022?
The paradox of the Kenyan courts is that in, constitutional cases, public law cases, our courts write fantastic judgments, especially when, the government either has interest or this. And I think that judgment stands out. I think it was a very brave judgment. Kenyans were really proud of it. It put the country on certain pedestal. And we were happy, not because of the politics,
Yeah.
Of course, in my view, BBI was bad, The idea that two guys, I've said this many times, can change the constitution on their own motion without much invitation from the public, was repugnant to a lot of things. But I think the courts, those 5 judges, people are really proud of them. Everybody.
Yeah.
The matter have gone to the Court of Appeal. We don't know how the Court of Appeal will decide. 7 judges this time. It's still up in the air.
Yeah.
I think it's 2 or 3 weeks down the road. But even Wanjiku knows some of these issues.
I was going to ask you what is your crystal ball on this?
No, I tell guys that BBI was a process owned by His Excellency the President. Even Wanjiku knows that one. You don't need a lot of argument. You don't need a good jurist to persuade me on that. And even I think the President himself knows that Wanjiku knows that was his process. But my view, I don't know how it will go, but my view is I think that is a difficult judgment to overturn because of it's a career-ending process, I tell guys. It's a career-ending. Normally, Normally, when you go against the grain, unless you are such, a powerful jurist, when you are very powerful, when you are, like Justice Scalia sort of, you can write a judgment that goes against the grain and even persuade some people that, although you may be wrong, you have made a very powerful argument. But in Kenya, that's a career ending.
Bro, for you?
I have a different take.
Let's hear it.
And
I think Prof has the benefit because I think he argued in the case. He was involved.
Let's hear it.
No,
yes.
I submitted. Is it actually in order for me to talk about it now that the judgment is pending? But anyway, my perspective. And I want to separate the judgment from the question of amending the constitution from the political, from the BBI politics.
Yes.
So for me, it should be possible to amend the constitution, in the sense that a constitution should neither be too easy to amend nor too difficult to amend. Because if you make it too easy, then obviously we'll end up with the problem that we had with the old constitution. It was amended every other day. And for very bad reasons. On the other hand, if you make it extremely difficult to amend the constitution, then what are you telling the people? If they want change, how are they going to do it? It seems you're pushing them in the direction of a revolution. So I think for me, it's about getting a balance. It shouldn't be neither too easy nor too difficult to amend the constitution. And from my perspective, I think Article 255 gets it right, because it tells us that there are certain provisions of the Constitution that are not impossible to amend. They're important, but we can amend them through certain procedures. Whether or not BBI then qualifies
the process that went on.
Yeah,
that's a separate question.
That's a separate question. But for me, fundamentally, I think we need to preserve the ability to amend the constitution when we need it. So look at it this way. Probably in some quarters, some people perceive the BBI bill as unpopular.
Yeah.
What if we have a popular bill? What if the Kenyans genuinely agree that they want to amend the constitution to address certain issues? How will they do it? It should be possible to do that. Yes.
Well, I mean, I agree with Prof 100%. We don't need a very rigid constitution that makes it impossible for society to move forward.
Yeah.
Similarly, we don't want, what happened in Kenya since 1963, Most of the time, the president, whether it was Kenyatta or Moi, used to wake up and change the constitution like this. And I think that's what informs, the heat on either side of the divide when it comes to BBI. I mean, was it very easy way? Or did the court make it difficult? The argument is still there.
Yeah.
But I think the politics is always very important, If it's a very popular initiative, I think people will like it. If it's a very unpopular, emotions will be very high. So apart from how to amend the constitution, I think BPI was divisive from a political point of view. And that's what, defined it more than anything else.
And that's the problem of where I think we are, because the BBI process has sort of caught itself with this 2022 politics, and then the judiciary and the entire legal profession, the entire Kenyans are embroiled in this problem that we don't know how to unbundle ourselves, because it is supposed to achieve certain things. It has certain ends for next year's election, isn't it?
But that is part of the problem, because I think also constitutions are best made or amended behind the so-called veil of ignorance, in the sense that the people that are amending the constitution should not benefit from it. Yeah. If that were the case, then you see it takes the heat out of it, because we know, yes, these amendments are good for Kenya in the future, and those that are doing it are not going to benefit from it in the immediate term.
Yeah.
That I think would calm down the waters.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's good practice for us to be able to say, let us be amending the constitution for the future, not for immediate, to address immediate political ends.
So the next question and it's been raised severally, and I think I'll be remiss if I do not bring it up. There's the question of, we're not going to have an election in August 2022 for some reason. That has been floated several times in several quarters. Where does that sit?
No, that's absolute nonsense. Take it to the bank. We will have elections in August. I mean, who can stop Kenyans from having an election? I mean, why are we even entertaining, you know, such nonsense in my view? I mean, we have never missed an election. You know, we are one of the few countries in Africa, and I think it's a proud thing. It's something to be proud of. From 1963 to now, every 5 years we held our elections.
Come what may.
Yes, absolutely. So in August 2022, we will go to the polls.
Prof?
I agree entirely.
Right. So this question of postponing elections is
highly unlikely, in my view.
What do you do with politics? What do you do with politics? I mean, and start with you because you know you're not only popular in this, but you know you wade into these matters oftenly. What happens with our politics when it's coming and it's sort of collision course with everything else we do with our public life?
You know, we were just discussing. I mean, our politics is the same. You know, the way it was 20 years ago. Nothing has changed. The main players are the same. The topics are the same. The issues are the same. Even us who are making noise on the side, we were making noise 20 years ago.
On the same side?
On the same side. We have not made progress. Yeah. So, I mean, our politics is, that's our politics, you know. I mean, Raila, Ruto, Mudavadi, Wetangula, I mean, they were there 20, 30 years ago. They are here. The same, I mean, they are fighting for the same. Nothing changes in this country, does it?
Prof?
I think it will only change when we take money out of politics.
How do we do that?
Through campaign finance reform.
Prof, I think probably you may have wrote on. I mean, what fuels corruption, you know, in the public sector is people in power or authority preparing themselves for the next election cycle. I mean, all these guys with helicopters, I mean, you know, they don't run law firms, they don't run banks. They're just politicians. And if you ask them, how did they buy these helicopters, nobody can answer you. But, you know, it is a vicious circle. You get a public office, you steal so that you can run a credible campaign. And I think, read the book by Kretu Murungi. Mm-hmm. It addresses that issue. He explains why he left the idealism of the reforms and his friendship with Professor Makau Wamutua when Goldenback exploded. And he said he felt liberated now from those, he's called abstract ideas of Professor Makau. So, in Kenya, for you to run a successful election campaign, you have to have money. And these politicians are not industrialists. You know, they don't run industries. They steal from the public, then they campaign so that they get the office. The next cycle, they reimburse themselves, and it's a circle. And I think Prof is right. You can take this through an election campaign financing. We must know where this money is coming from. That fuel is these helicopters, that buys these T-shirts. Unless you do that, I mean, it will the same.
Mm-hmm. Let's address some final questions as we head out, and close out the show. And we go back to the question of corruption in courts. And the question here is like, we agree that the courts are corrupt, but the bribes that the judges are receiving is coming from lawyers like the two of you. Can you talk about that?
Yes. Let me go. It is true. I mean, first, judges are bribed by three players. Lawyers play a big role. Litigants play a big role. But nowadays, I can tell you that even there are certain, it's very strange nowadays. Even the government plays nowadays role in bribing judges. And it's something...
How do they do that?
I mean, they give money to judges to rule in favor of government. Certain parliamentarians even nowadays play a role. And this is also a unique thing. Previously, lawyers were the main. Secondly, is the public. Sometimes, I mean, you will see a litigant who has his own connections, who goes... There is also a lot of judges among themselves trying to influence their brothers, here or there. So it is there. But you see, let me tell you, you can address that issue if the JSC and the Chief Justice has a program on how to fight corruption. You must talk about it. You must sensitize. You must condemn. You must pack a lot. That way you can address the issue. But when you keep quiet about it, if you keep quiet, and nobody has spoken about corruption in the judiciary in the last 5 years, when you keep quiet about it, I mean, it hits the sky, and at present, the condition is very bad. Of course, the government, you know, when it arrests judges, it's not fighting corruption. We must make that distinction. The government is not fighting corruption when it arrests the judges. It's fighting a political war against the judges, and that's not acceptable in my view. Yes.
But the pretext, I think, for the government to do that are these goings on in the judiciary, which is why the judiciary then has to put its house in order, so to speak.
How do you stop lawyers from bribing judges, Prof?
You can't, but the same way that you demand integrity of judicial officers, you must demand integrity of the lawyers. I remember you started a process of a vetting process among the lawyers, wasn't it? And
yes,
it wasn't well received. I mean, why?
I can tell you that when I was chairman of Law Society and we started a process, I was checking my files, and if you look at the list someone wrote me, there's a Kenyan who wrote me a list. He said, Ahmed, these are the 20 most corrupted lawyers in Kenya. And I was checking my file. That file is like 10, 15 years old. And those lawyers are still on the scene, 10, 15 years down the road. Yeah. So it is true. I mean, you know, even lawyers, even the Law Society, I mean, the Law Society has an obligation to address whether its members bribe judges. I mean, there must be a public hearing on this. It must seek views from the members and say that, you know, we're having this a bad reputation. Kenyans think that we bribe judges. What can we do about this? Yes.
On the question of not only just getting, you know, Kenyans feel, and the question here is because lawyers are unable to, and lawyers protect each other, so sort of this peer-to-peer review is a protection sort of mechanism. Kenyans who are non-lawyers feel that we are unable to clean that because the profession itself, it's almost unable to. It's the same thing we have with doctors. When you know, there's malpractice, you know, doctors always protect each other. So how do we break that? If we're never going to change the JSC and change how the judiciary works, how are we going to break that from, you know, from happening and start an integrity process, you know, inside the profession to sort of, it's a long road, but at least can it start?
I mean, I would look at it as a teacher now. And for me, I think by the time somebody is at university, the battle is lost. You need to start with them when they're young. Integrity training has to start very, very early. It's a societal problem. I don't think corruption is a problem that is peculiar to the legal profession. So we just must get it right in terms of the ethics from the very beginning.
All right, and I need to leave, but I'll be remiss without asking Granmula about your beloved Jubilee. With all due respect, it's dead.
I think dead. We will. I think. I think the right word is, of course, it's dead.
Of course, it's dead.
Yes.
Why don't you like Baba? I'm being asked.
No. Actually, I don't. I've never said I don't like Papa.
Yes.
But I hold him to a certain standard. Yes.
And anyone else not in the same standard?
Different standards, but I hold him to a certain standard. But I've explained this a lot of times, and I need more time.
You need a new show to do this, but go ahead.
I like politicians who tell the truth. And when they tell the truth...
Is there any?
No, there are some who tell, but I don't like someone. You know, even the judiciary, when I fought the judiciary, and I have a long history, even I was thrown out of... There's a time the judiciary refused to hear my cases. But I tell guys, I don't mind a corrupt judge, but I hate a corrupt judge who pontificates about the virtue of being clean. Yes. That you can translate it into the politics of Kenya. I don't mind a corrupt politician. I can live with him. But I don't want like a corrupt politician pontificating about being very clean. It's like you it's like a prostitute that wants to tell you about the virtue of a good lady. You feel offended, eh? That's my principle.
What's the crystal ball for as we move forward to 2022? I must have you guys again and discuss as we move forward, especially after the BBI. But
certainly for me, I do hope that the new Chief Justice addresses this question of having day-to-day mechanisms for holding the institution of the judiciary and judicial officers to account.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think we can end on that. It's very important for us to have accountability and audit of judges. What do you do during the day? How rich or poor are you? Do you have a house? What have you bought? All those things. That's the way to address corruption.
All right. Professor Migai Akech, karibu sana. For your first time, you've done very well.
Thank you, my pleasure.
I think Ganmula will agree that Ganmula always sharp.
Exceptionally well.
Yes. we should have you again and again. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
I
hope to see both of you again somehow after the BBI.
Anytime.
Yes, yes. Professor Makau would want to be here, but he had some classes to attend to. All right. That does it for us, but let's finish with these thoughts and quotes on social media that are coming up right now on your screen. Gitao CPA says corruption in the judiciary is catalyzed by parties who are familiar with the system. Both the bench and the bar. Rooted problems require rooted solution. Hashtag WDR. We cannot disagree with that. Parliamentary committee has failed Kenyans. Someone needs to initiate these changes. Kim Soto on Twitter. And the final one on your screen right about now. Okay, right. That delays, but that does it for us. Thank you very much for your company. There's a lot of feedback that has come on tonight. And the question on the corruption in judiciary and judicial independence and judicial accountability, I think is going to be a topic for us for a long time. And in this program, with all due respect, no holds barred. Thank you to my guests, Ahmednasir Abdullahi and Professor Migai Akech.
Thank you.
We'll do this all over again on this station, the same time next week. My name is James Smart. Have a